These guys don't know what's about to happen tonight, Eric. They got the video. Here comes the intro.
Nice.
The madness is about to begin.
Start a revolution.
Start a revolution. Welcome to Jig Squad, everyone. I am Mike Murphy, aka Kuda, and this fantastic gentleman next to me is the Minister of Culture, Mr. Epic Eric.
Cheers,
Eric,
man.
cheers,
Cheers.
brother.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How about yourself?
I'm
It's
good,
been like
man.
an interesting week.
Yeah, man. I got a lot of organization done, man. I've been down in the lab creating a few things. Got a little show and tell tonight.
That is fantastic.
I might ask Brian to rate my tying skills. Who knows what's gonna happen, man? I might
Rate
bust
my
out my
skills.
old fly box with some of my own original fly designs, man. Yeah, dude.
That's awesome. I started pulling out some materials, and I'm not going to call it the itchy wacky. I think I'm going to call them whack jobs. And
Inchy wacky is not my term. Inchy wacky is what they
the
coined it in Japan.
style.
I haven't even named this little bugger, man. I don't
You
know,
got
man.
you have to get a name for that.
I do.
I have
You
a
know,
I
you
have
gotta
a
try to
couple
name
things
everything.
going. I sketched out the designs that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
One has a little round rubber in it.
Right.
I'm also going to be using some ice dub for
Yep.
some and some other versions of like ice dub to get this real crinkly looking, buggy looking effect
Yeah.
by the ball head. And I showed the jig I'm using. I'm using that wacky head jig mold from Do It Mold. So I got hey, listen here. I'm going to show you this. I got a couple of cool things in this week. Let's see if I can show. I'm kind of excited about this. Hold on, I got to get the camera. See if I can do this. So this is the round head with screw lock.
Oh, nice.
So I'm excited about that, just for throwing small little finesse river swim baits.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked about last week the Sparky jig mold. I have the Sparky jig mold, which is like an Arky style, but with a little more flattened out bottom, and profile pops out a little more on the side. But I also picked up the weedless one. My camera. Let's see if I can. This is going to be the thing. So, let me turn it.
Yeah. It's a little bright.
There you
see
go.
it kind of if you turn it that way.
Yep. So I'm excited about that. So new toys to play with. But anyway, hey, you guys, listen tonight. For everyone live, we appreciate you. Lots of comments already. We'll do some shout outs as we get going, but we have a phenomenal person on tonight, Mr. Brian Schmidt of Brian Schmidt Baits. You guys may have seen his stuff on Tackle Warehouse, but this guy comes with a phenomenal story, pedigree, and a history, and I'm super excited to see everyone. I'm looking. We got Andrew Morph Lures fishing the 262. We got all these people in chat. M Jones, Keep Your Linesman, Benji, Addicted Angler, Anthony, SDG, Swim Jig 50. So we're going to have fun tonight. I'm sure there's going to be more people jumping in, but we're not going to hold out much longer because this guy is going to give us an education tonight. And I'm super excited to talk with him. So we're going to bring him in right now, Mr. Brian Schmidt himself. And here he is. Brian Schmidt, welcome to Jig Squad, buddy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well.
Very excited to have you, buddy. So listen, guys. So Brian Schmidt, I got excited about Brian Schmidt, to be honest with you, doing research on flies, ironically enough. And, as the whole Jig Squad thing came about, I'm like, I got to try and get Brian Schmidt to be part of the Jig Squad experience.
You're damn
right.
You mentioned his name and I'm like, I own his baits. Get him on. They're exotic and awesome.
There were people, and if you're out there right now, there are people out there that said, "Oh, you're not going to get Brian Schmidt." No, it's not about getting somebody. It's about somebody believing in the experience. And so,
in the revolution, and
Brian Schmidt is all in.
Absolutely.
Brian, tell us a little bit. So before we get started, I'm sure we're gonna have lots of good conversation tonight. But before we get started, talk to us a little bit about you and just kind of like your history in the fishing industry. And kind of, what some of that history is and then what you're doing today.
Gosh, let's see. I started tying flies before I could really even cast a fly rod very well. It was, really young. Got away from it for a little while, but I've always fished, always had this childhood dream of being like Bill Dance, somewhere along those lines. And yeah, that
Sure.
that part didn't work out, but you know,
he fell in the water a couple times. He's got some good blooper vids.
He does. He's got some really, really great bloopers, actually.
He's got some
he's some good stuff. No, but I've always just been fascinated with fish, truthfully. I grew up on the East Coast, always had water on our property, or, the ocean wasn't far at all. So always just had this fascination with fish, and be it trout, warm water, you name it, whatever. Fast forward a whole bunch of years, I was a fly fishing guide in Pennsylvania. I was working at a fly shop, tying flies for that shop. Moved out to Colorado. I was a teacher and a bartender in the middle there. Went to Penn State, spent way too much time on the stream. Fast forward, moved out to Colorado, was a guide, worked at a shop in Boulder. And when Umpqua Feather Merchants was ready to move here, I interviewed for their fly tying, their fly guy job, so to speak. And
Bright, let me stop you there. So tell anyone who might not know what Umpqua is.
Umpqua is the world's largest fly manufacturer. That's pretty much what
it's like. The catalog of flies. So if you're a fly designer, right, and you want to get your flies into fly shops around the world, right, you go to these what do you call them, merchants or brokers?
This particular company is Umpqua Feather Merchants, and it's a historic. When they started out, they were the first guys to do this. Super nickel tour of the company. Started out, probably 50 some years ago, before anybody else. Basically, a guy in the back of his car wanted to sell flies, traveled around, found other guys who were doing very well with their fly patterns, said, "Hey, I got this idea. Let's sell your flies. Let's have someone make these. We'll sell them and you'll get a royalty for it." Royalty program started. A percentage of all of these flies that were being produced was being paid back to the designer. So, and it was only the best of the best, and it was only like the most useful flies. And in the beginning, that could have been a very easy thing to do, to come across. But as years go on, variations of those patterns, depending on how you look at it, either made them better or bastardized them, quite frankly. So the market got enormous. So did Umpqua. They became the leader, and pretty much it. Wrote the book.
I know I've owned some Umpqua flies over the years. I got heavy into trout fishing for a decade. What you can't see on that shelf is some Orvis center axis fly rods, 2 weights to 6 weights. I've bone fished, I've trout fished. I got deep into it. I love tying flies. That's how the fur and feather got into my brain to kind of like transfer over to the bass world. Once you are a fly tyer, I love to say this, you never see the world the same. Okay. Everything becomes a material possibility. You're looking at your cat's whisker. If you find a cat whisker, it becomes a stonefly antenna. Furriness on anything, ribbons on packages. Forget about it. Oh, yeah.
Brian, when you were out on the East Coast, right? Were you a fly fisherman then?
Yeah.
So you always were. See, now Eric talks about this, about being a fly fisherman. So here's me. So I have an 8 weight and I have a 5 weight. That's all I have. But the interesting part is that I started tying flies before I ever owned a fly rod.
Right on.
And the reason I started tying flies is because I had been making silicone skirted jigs for 20 plus years, and I just kind of I think I've told this before to everyone in the audience, but I started off because I was trying to come up with patterns that I can use as float and fly for fishing saltwater with my spinning rods and my son. So I started looking into this, and I'm like, wait a minute. I said, there are so many cool things I can add to jigs besides just the classic, marabou jig.
Yeah.
And so I started getting into fly design and studying people and learning how to do it. So my pathway kind of went reverse. And finally I said, well, I think I probably should get a fly rod here so I understand this a little bit. There's like a cycle to this whole experience, but I did it completely backwards. I had the horses and I bought the cart afterwards.
Right.
I threw flies on freaking spinning rod. I got a bumblebee fly from Kmart and a little round thing that you could select, and it probably had a woolly booger in there, but the bumblebee pattern, I didn't have to cast it far to get a bluegill. And I remember the bumblebee floating down in the water and then it just disappearing. And I'm like, that's so cool. That's the magic of fishing.
Yeah.
And that's the magic then of creating your own fly lure and then catching a fish on it, right? The connection with nature. Oh man, it's awesome. It's awesome stuff. So you guided. I have one more question, Kuda.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bud.
So you guided in PA. I heard you say that. What streams, man? Where did you guide? Because that's part of my area that I fly fished regularly. PA.
Oh, is that right? I was right around the Valley Forge area.
Oh wow.
So a lot of around Valley Forge Park, Pickering Creek, French Creek.
Okay.
Those were primary. Yeah, we would travel out to Spring Creek, but
Spring Creek. Isn't that the historic creek in PA?
Yeah, that and Spruce Creek are probably the two most famous.
Yeah, I fished both. I remember Spring Creek was really narrow and really tricky. And
very tricky.
Unbelievably tricky. I don't think I got a bite. It was so tough, man. It was a humbling experience.
Sure.
Man. So,
oh man.
Yeah. Saw some trout though, some big ends too.
Sure enough.
Just unreachable. I mean, crawling around trying to be very sneaky downstream, upstream. It didn't matter. Forget it, man. They're so educated there. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
There's a vibe. There's a vibe out in Colorado, and I'll tell you this, Brian, because you'll understand. So my family, we were up in, my wife and I and the three boys, right? We were up in Colorado like 2 years back, and I did not have fly rods at the time, right? But I was starting to tie things, and I didn't bring flies that I was tying because I was tying for saltwater, frankly. And so we go to Colorado, and I'm on the Big Thompson River in the Rocky Mountain National Park, right? And I get out, and I'm looking around, and there are guides everywhere with clients. And here's little old Kuda. I pull out a 9.5 foot whippy crappie rod with like a 1500 size reel on it, right? Spinning reel. And I tie up, and there's a guy getting out of his car, and he's tying things up. I'd been to the fly shop in Estes Park, and I picked out some flies, and this guy, I asked him, I said, I unload the car. We hadn't even checked into the hotel we were going to yet. So quick story. I tie a floater with a dropper, and I go, and I'm looking at the Big Thompson River, which is not too big at all for what it's worth. Right. I could almost jump across it. Yeah. And I said, I am going for this. And I asked this guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm throwing a nymph dropper. I'm like, I'm tying a nymph dropper, and here I am. And I knew all my terms, but I had no clue what I'm doing. And there I was. I strolled out there. I got no waders on. I got in that water. This is in July. I got in that water, and I got to tell you, I felt like somebody slipped ice cubes up and down my spine because I almost died. I go, whoa. And guess what? There, I caught my first natural brown, and it was a brown. And I was so happy. I'm like, and I think there's a picture of it on my Barracuda 8U Instagram page, but I was so excited that there I was. And of course it hit on the dropper, but I will tell you from that moment on, Brian, the mystique of Colorado, I was in love, and I bought the fly rod after I was in Colorado.
Is that right?
It's the truth, and God's honest truth. And I loved it so much, and it's such a magical experience. And now I can't wait to go back someday. Right. Yeah, and I haven't fly fished since then. But anyway, that's me and my story. But I never formally had that experience until I caught that fish. And then after that, it was like, this is amazing. Another level, but anyway, that's me. So you're out in Colorado, you're doing this type of stuff. And then at some point in time, you kind of move away from that, right? So you're not around the fly world to the same extent. Tell me your transition from that into what you're doing right now.
So I was working at Umpqua for about 10 years as the one of the guys who picks all the flies. but I dealt with all the royalty tires on a daily basis, handfuls at a time. And all the new submissions if it was something that we were going to go forward with, I would be in contact with that person and learn what I could about the fly, why they created it, what it's done, how long ago, the evolution, so to speak, of it. Really, it had to have solved a problem somewhere along the way.
I say, pause. Eric, did you hear what he just said?
Oh, no, it
has to do what, Brian? Say that again.
What?
It's got to solve a problem. It had to have solved a problem somewhere along the way.
That's design, man. In my opinion, right? That's design.
I love it. We're going to talk more about that.
We got 3 words. We want to see where you stack them. The Jig Squad Revolution. But okay, you're talking to me now.
There'll be 3 balls just up in the air the whole time, too.
Isn't that the truth?
It's so true, man.
It's not going to land. Wait till I put color first and change it all around.
Right.
Spin everyone's heads.
Brian's my kind of man. 3 balls in the air, none land. You dropping them, they're picking them back up.
That's right.
Very well said, Brian Schmidt. Very well said, my man. All right, so continue.
So that was it was such a cool job. I mean, I got to play with flies and see what people were creating and find out why. So, and sometimes it was great reasons, and sometimes they were not at all good reasons. And sometimes you could read right through their reasons. And more often than not, the fly told the story. But I think it was last week you brought up, or at some point you brought up Matt Bennett with his lunch money.
Yes.
Those were the good days to open the mail and see that fly for the first time as a submission was like, oh man. Oh man. Now you have to understand too that it was probably one of the finest presentations. His wife helped him create his shadow box, and it was wall worthy as it was, but it was like, oh my gosh. So there were really good days like that. And you get on the phone with this guy and you find out, where did this thing come from? Why did you choose these materials? Is it hook up intentionally, or is that just the way the design fell because it's a rabbit? Sure. All of this and that, then I had to learn how to tie the fly, whether it was a billfish fly or a Mises shrimp, with epoxy and the whole 9 yards. I had to learn how to tie the fly so that I could help the factories reproduce it.
Oh, wow.
To the point where the originator says, yeah, that's what it looked like, and that took a lot of time. Sometimes it took
that's incredible,
a long time. So I got to live through a lot of really good anglers' experiences.
Sure.
And understand their mindset and their situations, the situations that was unfolding in front of them that gave them the reason to create what they created, and when certain folks, I won't drop a bunch of names, but when certain people start designing flies the way they do, it speaks worlds for the evolution of flies. It really does. And I mean that in the best of ways. And none of those people are probably watching this at all. So I could probably
they're not.
Regardless, I don't want to drop names, but these guys know what they're doing, and they don't submit flies every quarter and sometimes you got to call them and say, hey, what have you been doing?
Wow.
Interesting.
Show me what you've got. And they're hesitant. Those are the ones that are like, you get in the mail and you're like, why have you been holding out on us? Please, come on.
It's like the artist. It's a crazy artist. They're true. They're artists. I mean, honestly, I grew up around art. My dad was a fine artist, and he did a lot of different things, and they're different.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, without a doubt.
No question.
I'm gonna hold this up real quick, Bryce, so you see this. So you mentioned Bennett earlier, and we've all used different types of zonker strips and stuff like that, or bunny, or call it whatever you want. But the guy that got me using if you could see the groovy bunny is from him, because this is one of the ones, in varying colors. There's a couple different colors there. There's some pinks and purples that he uses. But this was Bennett was a classic example of why I bought a specific type of material and wasn't thinking outside the box.
right.
in terms of creating, because I was really trying to replicate on a jig, ironically enough, what he was making with the lunch money. And I had several jigs that I made and designed and passed along to friends that were in that style of the lunch money. But I used, the groovy color, which basically is see if I can get the shine
Double dyed and barred, right?
Yeah, it's barred. It's barred. It's two-tone in color. But I mean, you could do anything like that with like a highlight with Sharpies and stuff too, So, but for me, it was like I saw the lunch money and I wanted to replicate it. I think he was out at I watched a video that he was tying at Durango Anglers or the Durango Fly Shop, and I saw it. I'm like, I have to make that in jig form. And so, but anyway, it's interesting hearing these names because this brings back my experience of getting into this whole thing.
You got some people out there that are on the stream right now. They're going, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'm going to be a student tonight. But, this is Jig Squad, bro, not Fly Squad.
We'll get back to the in a little bit.
So let's talk about the transitions. So this is the history. So the guy in front of us, folks, the point of this all is that Trippy says, show that again. So I'll talk as I'm is saying this. So the point of this all is that Brian makes custom jigs. One is the Ned Dread, all right, which is a finesse jig. He also makes finesse hybrid style. I'll call them finesse still with like football jigs and some other profiles. But so that's kind of what you do now, right? So talk about that a little bit, Brian.
So, at some point along the line, a long time ago, I realized that, fly rods were just not the right tool for catching bass. You can do it just like you can put a nail in with the screwdriver, but you're going to miss a lot. It's not going to be very effective in the long run. Not that you can't present the fly, a heavy fly. That's not so much what the problem is. It's the rods aren't built for lifting sticks. So it's a different tool ultimately. And you have to really overgun with a fly rod, in my personal opinion, if you're going to go after something that you should be going after with conventional gear anyway. That being said, I started focusing an awful lot more on the conventional gear that I had in the locations that I knew had fish. I had already designed a spinnerbait, a fly castable spinnerbait.
Oh, wow.
That went along with a fly castable jitterbug and spook, small spook.
Cool. So cool.
So, I mean, I grew up on the Susquehanna River practically, and then the Schuylkill River. So, I mean, smallmouth have been in my blood my whole life.
Sure.
And a lot of that, it's just, gosh, if I sum it all up, it's every little bit of experience that I've had fishing. I've paid attention to everything I've been doing, no matter if it was steelhead, trout, brook trout in the mountain, whatever. All of that is really a culmination of what I'm doing right now. I'm relying on every bit of that to produce jigs that are solving problems that I found with conventional skirted jigs. And not to say that there's anything wrong with them. However, in my location and in situations that I was in, I thought there's probably something I can do to make this a little bit more compact, not have to move it quite as much. Let the water do its thing, so to speak. Still be able to design something around an accompaniment, which is the soft plastic. So, that throws a whole other screw in the mix because you don't know what people are buying necessarily. And
that's a great point, because if the jig itself and the materials used in the jig is substantial enough, now I've said this before, there are times where I won't even use a trailer, which is not common practice.
Right.
But when you say something like that, Brian, I get what you're saying, because if you have a trailer in mind, like the difference between, let's call it a creature bait style, whether it's a sweet beaver, reaction innovation sweet beaver, or any profile in that category, a double-tailed grub, or personally, one of my favorites is like a straight tail or a portion of just a finesse worm. But you design certain things off of with the robo worm?
Certain things I'm a big fan of robo worm stuff. I mean, I always have been.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily have one plastic in mind when I'm doing it. It's not even so much the soft plastic is an afterthought, but it's a very soon afterthought. It's always second or third in line, but because it's going to make or break a material that I'm deciding on in the first couple steps. So, if I'm looking for something for a river situation, it's not necessarily the same thing as I would for still water that I'm going to pitch between cattails, so to speak.
Okay.
However, once it gets to the bottom, in between the cattails, I found that something with a natural material just sitting there still gets bit more often. When you pitch between the cattails, it doesn't normally hit the bottom before it's inhaled. Often, and I'm not saying with my stuff, I'm just saying in my experience, typically if you're pitching into that spot and there's a fish there, he's gonna not let it hit the bottom. If you find one of those spots where he isn't yet, I find that letting it sit there, I get bit more often than I would if it was just a silicon skirted jig. And I don't think that's necessarily water temperature related. That's the marabou, that's the bucktail, sitting still, settling, still moving. And I'm not going to lie, I use desiccant. That does.
What?
Do you see? What? I knew we were going to drop some juice tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me how you use it.
Yeah. Tell everyone. Great. Well, hold on, Brian. Tell everyone what that is, because I'm not sure everyone in chat knows what that is.
Okay, so yeah, like I was saying before, everything from the past kind of coming up to right now. It's a fly floatant. It's what you use to keep the fly on the surface in a river. So there's powdered versions, there's gel versions, there's aerosol versions. I'm using an aerosol version that I find it's the easiest. The gel versions on marabou, not such a great situation, right? So this aerosol, you spray it, and it basically every piece of marabou, every hair separates, and it's
my
isolated.
God, this is juice.
And you throw it in the water. And
do I have a banner for juice? Can we add this to the title? Juice.
Yeah. It won't keep. It doesn't affect a 3/8 half inch or half ounce jig. Okay, It doesn't at all. But on the first couple drops, it really makes that thing move an awful lot. It really does.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's some stuff you can do that with fur and feather, and don't be afraid of it, for goodness sakes.
Heck no.
It's strong.
So who makes
stuff.
it?
I mean, look what it's intended to do. It's the exterior of an animal. It's not like it's not wimpy cheap shit. Pardon my language, but you know what I mean? Like it's tough stuff. Be it bucktail or whatever.
Are there materials that you would use the floating on and not others, Brian?
Pretty much my finesse jig and my which is primarily marabou, the football version or the casting head version, and that's the one I use it on the most, because that has the most material that's going to be affected by it. I find on the Neds it's not really that important. It's kind of in the wrong place. So it's not worth it.
What brand do you use of the aerosol? People are asking. So
it's Tiemco, Tiemco.
Big flag time material hooks. They're out there big. Interesting, man.
Quite frankly, it's the best floatant that I've ever found, aside from like kerosene and special concoctions that you don't
want to use.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about that, Brian, is I'm surprised. Maybe I'm not. I am. I'm a little surprised, because I guess I didn't think about fly floating for use on marabou.
Sure.
And I mean, I didn't think about it to put on the jigs that we're using for bass in any capacity, but it makes absolutely perfect sense for fit and function of what you're putting it on the jig for, to use it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily to float the fly at all. It's just really just
No.
to, if you want some more excitement in the, in the jig, and and you don't want to necessarily have a soft plastic. You don't want to put it, or you don't need the soft plastic in the situation. Man, that thing just, it's ridiculous looking, man. There's
It's
just so much
funny.
life to it, That's just it. It just looks so alive. It's not
It
like
is.
doing anything specific that's like triggering a specific, reaction. It's looking alive, and that's kind of what it needs to do.
That's right. Flow.
Yeah.
Incredible, man. Incredible. Nothing like marabou in the water, that's for sure.
Yeah,
It's so funny. Yeah.
Black bear.
Oh, wow. Now you're getting deep.
Oh yeah, those two. It's so hard to beat bucktail, man. I mean, it just really is. The bucktail jig, there's so much movement that when you're holding bucktail in your hand, it absolutely, I mean, you tell me, does this really look like it's gonna do a whole heck of a lot?
Not at all. It looks dead when it's just sitting there on a jig head. It does. It doesn't. Nothing special, in my opinion.
When it's wet,
it
looks like a plastic worm, man.
That's a crazy thing. I think most people don't know. And if you go really back to the original freshwater, one of the people threw bucktail all the time. I've got a great story about Scooter. Was it Scooter Lilly, my team partner? I guess he was in a tournament. He had an old timer who brought one rod, and it was when this fish were schooling, big impoundment. He had a white bucktail, and it looked almost to be like a surf casting rod. And the fish would come up schooling. He would bomb a cast, and he caught like a 20-pound limit out of the back of the boat. One lure, one rod. I'm sure he had extra jigs, but it was a white bucktail, and that was
white bucktail.
And he got laughed at when he walked on. I mean, literally, like, you're kidding me, right? It's a joke. And the guy, he literally 20 pounds out of the back of the boat or something crazy like that.
Sure,
but it blew the guy's mind with $20,000 of gear. And here comes a 75-year-old guy who knows what's up, and it's a white bucktail jig. Crazy,
look at the East Coast striper guy. Look at the East Coast striper guys. I mean, if they have 20 lures in their surf satchel, probably 19 of them are white bucktails,
Yeah.
And so interesting.
Those dumb stripers will eat anything. They're not as smart as a bass, Cuda.
So here's another, dude. I'm going to tell you something. I would take the striper. That's why I put that picture of Brian with that striper in there, because I go, I've read tons of books about East Coast striper fishing and stuff. But here, listen, I'm going to show you something. So I have the larger sizes in the ultra minnow. Sorry about the camera light. But anyway, the jig sizes on this ultra minnow head, I just picked up the new one in the smaller sizes.
A lot of glare. I think we saw it a little bit though.
So when you hold it
sideways.
Let's
there
see.
You go. That's it. That's it. Leave it right there.
The ultra minnow head. Now I have this in the larger sizes, and I've tied up a lot of big bucktail, but this one has 1/8, 1/4, and 3/8, and I'm excited about that 1/8 and 1/4.
Yeah,
because I want to make some fun little things for some bucktails for going to Hawaii and stuff like that I want to be able to use in some smaller things. But it's not just saltwater. The saltwater guys love it. But I'll tell you what, I have a friend that is a big walleye guy, and he almost ties exclusively very minute amounts of bucktail without a lot of bulk to it. So he's tying it on a wired hook and without any lead buildup for like a collar, and they look very sparse. And people are like, "Oh, I don't know if I like that," but that's the only way they like to use them, because now you're just getting the bucktail action in the water, and they kill walleye on it. And so there's so many things to learn from hearing the use of materials. It's fantastic.
Yeah, man. So I got a question. Yeah. When you think of the Jig Squad Revolution and you see flow, color, design, do I have it right, Cuda? I want to know what you
damn you all, because I'm going to take them all out and throw them away.
No, that's the best.
You.
It's the best because it creates the conversation. Brian,
it does.
When you attack a new lure for Brian Schmidt's custom baits, what do you think about first?
I think about color last. Color becomes the least important first and becomes the most important last. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I could care less what I'm designing, what color it can be, or what it's
Sure.
going to be. It doesn't
Sure.
make a damn bit of difference. It's
Right.
this whole those cogs start, meshing because something happened. I ran into a wall. I had a customer call and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this,"
Right.
and I can relate. And we talk it out. This happens so often. It's ridiculous. I love that part of what I do. Because it's kind of like what I did in the fly world, really. I get to continue doing this with customers who are like,
yes.
So that's actually kind of really, that's really fun. But so the problem starts. The problem is the beginning.
Yep.
So I guess design is the first step in that, designing around that problem. Flow is inherent in the design. In my mind. And then once I have the idea kind of sketched out, and I don't use pen and paper, I use device. I sketch it out on a hook, simple steps, try to make it as simple as possible. Again, I take that from my years in production fly, dealing with production fly capacities.
Brian, when you do that, Brian, are you doing that to start to get an idea of what you have in your head in terms of proportions and what it starts to mature into on the jig based on what you're trying to design? Because you talked about designing with purpose and intent and what problem you're trying to solve, right? So that all speaks to generally design, and I guess we can angle it so many different ways, but that's the reason you're trying to proportion it, start to visualize how this looks, what becomes the next step, and how do I approach that next step of what I'm adding next.
Yeah, exactly. With traditional jig building, your options are kind of limited to the head you choose, with or without a weed guard, the color of the weed guard you choose, and the color of the material. That's about the extent of it,
So let me.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
With my theory or my whole process, I start off with that same jig head idea, figure out whether it's going to be weedless or not, but then everything changes because I'm not stuck to what a rubber band will hold on a collar. I'm stuck with what I can add to that collar and where on that collar I want it to be. And how colors are going to work together. Because single colors are wonderful, but tertiary colors are far more common in nature.
Oh my gosh. Fantastic.
Tertiary.
Comment.
Wait a minute. Time out. That's like really arty stuff. Let's talk about.
This is it. This is why color's number one for CUDA. Right here.
This is why color becomes the most important last. Because
I love the last.
Nice try, CUDA.
I gotta tell you, I'm tickled pink just talking about this stuff. This is awesome. All right, so go ahead. Let's play off of this.
Tertiary colors.
Tertiary colors. It's like, all right. Here's one of my spinner baits. There's three colors involved. Let's see, involved here.
Hold on, Brian. I'm gonna make you
olive. Yeah,
I'm gonna make you bigger. Hold on.
Let
me do that. How do I do that? Let's go. Brian's going to be the big guy here. All right, there you go, buddy.
Nice.
The spinnerbait, by the way, folks. This is the spinnerbait.
What a name.
It is awesome, dude.
Nice big deep cup blade.
Thumper.
You
gotta love a thumper.
Slow roll thumper. So back to color, right? There's three colors on here that basically once they're all together, these three, this olive, this brown, and this black, become what's kind of a melanin color, truthfully, which is if you were to look at like insects underwater in their nymph stage, so the little bugs crawling on around rocks that are brownish, that dark kind of brownish olivish kind of indescript, that color is called melanin. Right.
And I thought you said melanin and not
melanin. Did.
But I'm glad you repeated it. So now okay, good.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a tertiary color, and in my mind, that's kind of what I'm going for here. I want something to blend with most of its background. I mean, it's a spinner bait. It's a reaction bait. You know, it doesn't need to be chartreuse to get, you know, there's things going on here, you know.
Brian, do you have, I'm only going to say this because M. Jones is asking in chat. He says, let's see it wet. I got to see this.
I don't, let's see if I can get it wet. A lot of this stuff, just so you know, a lot of these, when wet, are designed to be a
real
continuation of the head with a taper, you know, not to be like, it's really meant to look like the bait fish.
Is that peacock? You got peacock herl in there?
Or no. There's a little ostrich.
Or ostrich.
There's bucktail at the back.
Ostrich coming off the back.
Nice. And look
at the herl.
Oh, look at that.
Nice.
Epic Eric's favorite material.
You damn right, man.
I got a trick for you.
Oh, I can't wait to see and tell and show.
Because I know you were saying the other day how much you hate working with this stuff.
Yeah,
Here we go.
I see a lot of things. Oh yes, I don't know how to hackle that. I tried, and I was so disappointed.
So here's the situation with this, man.
Yeah,
it's one-sided.
Yes, okay, but
what is that? Is that Aquaville?
You gotta tie it in from the top here.
Okay, right.
So the material's going down,
and then Palmer.
And when you use your hackle plier here, you want the flat base to be away from you.
Okay.
When you start wrapping it, it's going to stand this material straight up.
Straight up. That's what I was missing. Because when I took it out of the pack, I honestly didn't notice that it was just on one side.
It's buggy. One-sided.
Yeah, so that makes sense. It kind of like stands up like interesting, man.
Like a hackle.
Give that,
you know, it'll follow it. It'll follow the one before it.
I knew what I wanted to do with it, but it didn't lay the way I wanted to.
No, I know. And if it doesn't, it's a nightmare, and it looks like trash.
Terrible. I was going to try to put it on a chatterbait. I was going to try to recreate this chatterbait that I tied a bunch of fur, you know, in silicone. But this was money for me. It's just nothing but a zonker strip with a bunch of flash poo and a little bit of silicone and two little, you know. I wanted something that was really, really bright and that flashed when it vibrated. And they flat out ate the bait. Oh my gosh, there you go.
So on a white one,
it's beautiful.
You know,
it adds volume. Really well. It really does. Oh my God, that must be just ridiculous coming through the water.
Holy smokes!
I just got chills. I need to throw that. I can't even.
But hold on, Brian, hold that up again, because as much as that creates some profile, that actually the translucency going through all this, it's got this illusion of bulk. But it's really not that crazy bulky, is it?
It's really not. But the one thing that it does, like a conventional, is when you pause it, it flares.
It flares.
Right.
You know?
It does it better than a conventional. There's no silicone on earth that's going to pop out like that.
Yeah, no.
And then have the movement. Like if I'm like reeling it at a steady pace and it's collapsed, but then I do that little pop or just a little
change that speed.
And it's a split, it's a split second delay. Like I'm going to show a bait because I designed this trying to solve a problem. So when I was a kid, I threw a beetle spin a ton, and I caught the crap out of fish on that Johnson's beetle spin with just a flat out straight. There you go. It's polar chenille. Thank you for holding that up. You did ask.
That is beautiful.
So I you know, and I lost a lot of fish because the hooks were crappy on the Johnson beetle spin. I'm talking about the big one. Then later in life, my friend had this pond called Pond X. And we would go early in the season trying to catch some crappie, and we're throwing beetle spins. And I tied up some really chenille type buggy, like crystal flashy bodies with just a little flash boo out the back from the tail, midge flash or whatever. I cooked up all different colors with a gold blade, Colorado, and we caught big bass. When I would get the bite, I'd be slow rolling this thing. I'd pop it, and then I'd stop it for a split second, re-engage, and the fish would be on it. But I wanted something that was a little bit bigger with a really good hook on it. So I found these, man, and I can't even remember where I bought it, but it's got the right style head, but a premium hook. And so I took a little material on the top, and I wanted it to look like a little, you know, little minnow. Yeah. I could put something on I could parmel some stuff up on the shank, but I didn't do it. This was the thing I tied last night. I wanted a big eye on it. And but this goes on this blade. So here's a question for you. Is there any big spinner bait that would operate like a beetle spin? Like a big one, like a 3/8. Has anybody seen a big beetle spin
Gosh.
ever made? I know the redfish guys use them. And does anybody think it would work for bass?
Yeah,
I know I caught them on the 1/8
absolutely
ounce, right? Because there's just natural action. Like this free head is something. It'd be like having a chatterbait with an articulated back. I tried it and I failed, by the way. I tried tying fur and feather onto a trailer hook and put it on the back of a chatterbait, and it didn't have the action I thought.
Gotcha.
But I wanted a fixed trailer on a chatterbait. But anyway, that was my little Bass Lab creation last night.
Heck
and
yeah, that's good.
Fantastic.
It's a premium hook, nothing special. I don't know, but I like the this white material. If anybody sees it, it's the Lumaflex. I've been dying to use it. What do you think of Lumaflex, man?
I love it.
You know, why did it? You can still buy it. You can still buy it.
Sure.
Why did it die? Why did it? You saw it come on and then it kind of like went away, but it has crazy material properties and action.
Yeah, you know, who knows? It's almost everything in the fly world comes from the garment and fashion industry.
That's so crazy.
Most of the bulk products that I get, I buy from a company that sells to Las Vegas for showgirls primarily.
What?
Yeah, all the boas and the big.
I love showgirls. I mean their materials.
For real.
I love the materials.
We're just a byproduct, you know.
Feathers and boas, baby. Bring them on.
Right?
That's great.
So God knows what the reason behind Lumaflex going away. It's you can buy it from other places called Spanflex.
Okay, yeah.
I've heard that.
All of it. You know, what you can do with that stuff, Eric, is if you get the end of it and get a pin, you can split it and you can fray the end of it. And so it's one strand at the tips you can get. Yeah.
What?
It's because it's a whole bunch of individual tiny strands.
It's like string cheese.
Whoa.
It's like string cheese.
So Brian, hold on.
It's just like string cheese, dude.
Yeah.
Brian, I have to ask you, and I'm gonna have to put some of these things out sooner or later, and I don't have it in front of me because so I messed around for a while and I started making so the fly is a gotcha, right? And I started taking that material and I was putting it on jigs. So the mylar. So it's basically for anyone in chat, it's mylar tubing, right? And there's lots of different ways to make it, but I would make it. I was variations of it, and I was using mylar tubing. But what excited me about what Brian just said with the Lumaflex is that the mylar tubing, if you fray the end of the mylar tubing, it causes these little, I guess I'll call them little tentacles to be spread out. And a lot of times it's like I don't want to call it UV. What would I call it? It's like Flashaboo. Imagine what you would see from Flashaboo or crystal.
About like on a sand eel fly, the mylar tubing that people tie sand eels with.
Yes. And so, but I never knew you could do that in Lumaflex too. Well, that's good.
You can just put that stuff up. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
It's pretty cool,
for sure.
Wow.
Very cool.
I know Anthony asked a question about trailers on these. As these are, no, you can't put a soft plastic on them. But I gotta tell you, the majority of the ones that I sell from the house to customers are without this back end.
Okay.
It's just this front end. They do have a little bit of the UV chenille up here, but then the back is left open, and I put a little keeper on there because a lot of people want the bulk, visible. But the whole idea initially was that the back end of this would take care of that without adding bulk. But it does a great job as it is. I mean, it really does. But yeah, you can get, if you want some.
Look at Robert Danielson saying this. You guys are making me feel insignificant in my bait building. Robert, I'm going to tell you something, buddy. The only thing that is not good that you make is that which you don't try to even start. And, and the thing is, we can all critique each other to no end. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're out there trying to create and just experimenting with different materials, let's be honest, guys. we have a lot of fishing stuff, and there's a lot of other things that work for catching fish, right?
I'm raising my hand, Kuda, as the administrator. You need to call me
The
because
minister of culture knows this.
My brain. Okay, so lunch money fly.
I love it.
Flat style, right? Big, broad, tall.
Yes.
I guess you could make giant lunch money flies too, right?
Sure.
The size could be increased.
A big chinchilla or something.
Right.
Chinchilla, yeah.
So I think about, you think about a spinnerbait, and you think about the body. The body is always collapsing, but yours has bulk. Could your spinnerbait, your schmitterbait, be tied to the size of a gizzard shad? Or not even a gizzard, like a shiner, like an 8-inch shiner. Has anybody ever called, like the musky guys? Like you see these giant, I don't know that anybody, but you hear stories about musky guys connecting with big bass on their musky lures. That was the origin of the whopper plopper. If anybody doesn't know that story, they designed the whopper plopper, the OG one, for musky fishing. I think I've got it right. And because they were catching a lot of big bass on it, they downsized to the, some of the whopper ploppers you see today, and then went to the smaller ones. So it just made me think,
yes,
the swim bait crazy. Yes. Okay. Yep.
I have some here somewhere.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about digging those out, but I lived in Tennessee briefly. And river stripers and muskie.
Wow.
Yeah, man. That's so basically you're building a giant spinnerbait, right? Same way. More bucktail than marabou because of the material length.
Okay, that makes sense.
You're still essentially accomplishing the same thing,
Sure.
It's going to be a little bit more durable. I mean, and when I say a little bit, I'm a very little bit. You're talking about pretty toothy creatures, right? They're not, So giants, and then a trailer treble hook on the back.
Very interesting. And the only reason I brought that up is because there's a big bait craze storming the nation. They're called swim baits, glide baits. The working class zero citizen, which is the battle shad is a 9-incher. And so why haven't we seen that translate to giant bladed jigs and or giant spinner baits for bass? I don't know of anybody marketing it. I have seen, and I think one of the anglers did very well on it was what's the one with the it's the scrounger head, and one company ties it super long with a lot of hackle and schlappen.
Hog Hunter, I think.
Yeah,
Hog Hunter. That might be right.
Yeah, I think it is.
I don't know that I've seen a spinner bait designed that way, and it sounds like you've tied them though, so my brain is in the right place. I would throw it. I'd want to try it just to see.
They work
would
super
I
well, man.
Would I get a big? Well. Yeah, would I get a bigger bite? Like when I upsize my crankbaits from a 1.5 to a BDS 4, I know I'm getting a bigger bite. There's no question. It just has happened too many times. There is something to the bigger bait, bigger profile. So anyway, just man, that's cool that you've tied them. You got to send me a picture. I want to see it.
Yeah, I'll definitely dig one up.
Okay.
That picture that you guys posted with the striper, that one was caught in the Tennessee River. In a Tennessee River on one of those.
Get out. That's
really
so cool.
Yeah.
Kuda, did you know that? That's neat. And I'm
Fishing
sure people run into big bass. What do you got there?
Some of the swim baits I make too.
What? You make swim baits?
See, I wondered if this is going to come up. Now Eric's going to get excited.
It's called Jigsquad Plus. What is that swim bait? I got to ask one question. We'll move on back to jigs. I'm sorry. What's the material?
It's wood, man. Hand carved.
Oh, we're talking after the show. You had me at hello.
Oh, this is so great.
Here's a rat without a tail.
Classic.
Oh, yes.
Oh, Eric's gonna pass out right now.
Yeah, I'm reserving that. Don't even try to buy it from Brian. I'm talking to him after the show. He's gonna be making me one, just FYI, if he will accept my order.
Yeah, Brian. Well, we'll talk.
Brian, let me ask you.
He used to sell those through Tackle Warehouse, as a matter of fact.
That's so crazy.
Really?
Wood. There's nothing like wood. Sorry, the guys that pour the plaster stuff, it's good, but if you have a wood one, sorry, wood, feather, and fur, I just don't think can be competed with in the synthetic world. It's my personal opinion.
I got to agree with you, man. I mean, bull
it's
spank, crankbaits, you name it. I mean,
oh,
the old headings, you know, the wooden ones.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
They're just super
Those
responsive. There's a crispiness to all of it, man, that just can't be ignored. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's weird.
And I'm just a tweaker and tinkerer by design, I suppose. So
right on.
Can't really.
Right. Let me ask you something. So you have stuff. You have your stuff on Tackle Warehouse, right?
Yeah, my website is. I have not updated that, so that's the only.
And I linked that down below, so just so people can see and know that there is a home for Brian Schmidt Custom Baits, but no sales through there. So, are there other options besides Tackle Warehouse for purchasing items from Brian Schmidt?
Just through me. I mean, if you wanted to Instagram or DM me or email me or whatever, right now, if you're in Michigan, Schultz Outfitters does sell a fair amount of my stuff.
That's good to know too.
Yeah. So basically, right now, I'm right at the point where I'm starting to take on dealers that have been calling, and I've had to say no to. My webpage is the way it is because it doesn't show much of anything that I make. In fact, basically because I can't take orders. I've been so too busy, and I hate saying no to people. So I stay under the radar, and and now that I'm at the position I'm at, that's why we're talking now, because I'm coming out from underneath that kind of fear of telling people no.
So Brian, let me tell everyone in the audience tonight a little bit about you and my interaction with you, right? So Brian and I had connected, I don't know what, Brian, a month and a half back, something like that.
I don't know. What's today?
Yeah, and so and I had expressed interest in having him on the show, and we talked a little bit, and kind of moving towards it. I just have to tell us, I don't even think Brian's heard me say anything like this. But the interesting thing is, it was weird getting a view into his world a little bit about his experiences, right, in terms of running a business. And it was real interesting to me because here I am, I'm thinking, this guy designs jigs. I can't wait to talk to him. But in trying to contact him, there's a lot to this gentleman right here. And there were multiple times where I would go to connect with Brian, or we would try and set something up to talk. But Brian does a lot of work with overseas companies as well, Australia. Wow. So Brian, how many hours a day would you say that you are at the Vice time?
Oh man, it's really a minimum of 10.
Holy crap.
Did you hear that, folks? 10.
Yeah.
That's unreal, dude.
That's the real deal.
These things are my best friend.
What brand scissor and what brand vise do you use? I know you got a rotary. You have to, right?
Yeah, I only use Tiemco tungsten carbide scissors.
Oh wow. Okay, that's a step up.
I have backups.
Oh,
I have 11 pairs of these in rotation and 2 backups right now.
Oh,
3 backups. I sharpen them once a month.
Wow.
Then I use I have a couple Renzetti Masters.
I love my Renzetti rotary. I don't have a master, but that's awesome.
Yeah. And
I'm just a low down Renzetti traveler type of guy.
Nothing low down about that.
More than functional,
man. You got that? Yeah, dude, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's I do this for a living, so I don't get to drive a Ferrari, but I get to tie on one.
That's a great comment.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's a great comment, man.
That's the comment of the night, man. I love it.
Yes.
I love that. I never heard anybody say anything like that in life. That's so cool.
Yeah.
How do you relax, Brian? Look at so Adam Felder, who you know, because Adam was on last week, right? He says, or 2 weeks back, he says, how does it not just become a grind? Like, so what do you do to help maintain your sanity?
Maintain the sanity. That's a oh man. Whew. There isn't any maintaining of sanity, brother. I mean, look what I'm doing for a living. It's highly considered insane. And I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. I'm proud of that. In fact, What do I do to relax? The reality is I sit right here in this chair. I'm at a window that I can see the Rocky Mountains when it's not dark.
Wow.
That's huge. But my biggest recharge is listening to music.
Okay.
Truthfully. That's what kind of I have a ginormous hi-fi stereo I'm really into. But that's where I go and sit down, turn the lights off, and listen to whatever I feel like. And at the end of that, man, I can think so much more clearly. And I don't mean it to sound stupid or cliche, but it's the recharge. It's what does it. Unfortunately for me, I'm at a point where fishing is not necessarily that for me. I enjoy the hell out of fishing. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not doing it for competition, but I'm not doing it for the same reason that I used to do it. Mentally, there's always a process involved with fishing, which is really unfortunate. I'd really love to kind of get rid of that aspect because it's not wearing on me. But I would really love to love fishing like I used to instead of loving trying to solve problems.
Going out for a purpose, right?
Yeah,
You're at the pond, you're looking at this thing you've created to see if it solves the problem, right?
Right.
You can't turn the work mind off.
I can't.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
So I think people that get to that level that you're at, it changes you, right? I mean,
without a doubt.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, you've been at the highest levels of the fly tying industry, and now you creep into this other, venue. And I'm sure you have a lot more going on than we all know about, but it becomes you, right?
Yeah.
And so I need to know your playlist. I agree. To get to the level where you're at, it has to be, you got to pursue your hair on fire. You don't get to the top of any game lucking into it. I mean, maybe some people did somewhere, but I know I didn't get to where I am in the corporate world without busting my ass when everybody else was fishing.
Right.
Now I'm getting to pursue my passion, and damn, it's late in the game. I'm 59. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like a crazy silver lining to the pandemic was it, kept everybody inside, and I connected with this wonderful community called fishing, man. And it's changed my life for the better, for sure. So it's cool. I would have never met you if honestly, if that pandemic didn't happen, would never met you.
Absolutely.
I would have never met Kuda.
Yeah.
Right. No,
and Kuda wouldn't have asked me to be his yeah, right. So it's kind of cool. I do need to hear what's on your playlist at some point, but not tonight. We'll have to, yeah. Anyway, because I want to know what settles you down. I'm still looking for that.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, mine too. I shared some of my playlists with a guy from Ike Live, and he was like, their social media guy's like, dude, you're psychotic with that playlist. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. The only thing it was country. Can't jam on country for some reason, man. Don't try. Don't. I don't want to hear from anybody out there right now. I'm open to ideas, but Travis played me like 60 country songs. I'm like, nope. As soon as they open their mouth and that train comes out, I can't take it. Sorry. This is not me, man.
It is so exciting, Brian. It is so exciting because, here's the thing. And Brian and I had some real good conversations before we ever, got to the point of us doing, this show. Right. And one of the things, I'm just going to share this because, one of my big things with the Jig Squad experience is that, I want to be transparent and I want to have honest conversations. And and the thing is, it was gonna go that way anyway. But I'll never forget one of the things Brian said to me in a conversation we had. And Brian, I'll find out later. I mean, I don't think you're gonna mind that I say these things, but Brian had said, he goes, you know what? He goes, just always remember your audience is what makes you what you are, right? And that never talk down to people.
Heck no.
And I want to, and I'm saying this because I forgot who it was earlier that had made the comment and said, I kind of basically saying like, I kind of feel like I'm not up to snuff with these designs and stuff like that. So, and I forgot who that was that had said that earlier, but that made me think of that point that Brian said to me. Cause guys, you got to understand, I still, and I'm not afraid to be in the room with anyone. But what I'll say is I also know who's in the room with me right now, right? And Eric's in here all the time. All these awesome people in chat. But the fact that we were able to bring somebody in who's been on the other side of the fly world and doing all these things and understanding materials, who now lives in kind of what we think is our world of jigs, and to have Brian, I find this tremendously rewarding that we're able to have somebody like Brian come in and take the time out of tying 10 hours a day, because there were a couple of times like Brian and I were trying to connect and like he was trying to fill orders to send to Australia. Like
Australia, that's
crazy stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, what an honor to have Brian in here. Right. And so much, I'll tell you what, the fly floating stuff, I got a lot of good ideas tonight from this guy. Okay? He comes up with a lot of good things.
That.
So I thought about using that on my, like, one little note on the desiccant. I'm like, you know how your line, if you're throwing a popper or even braid, it just absorbs at some point. It's going to get waterlogged. And I'm like, how about some, because you know how you'd put it on your freaking fly line, right? When you're trying to float a dry fly. I'm like, so let me try it on my little, my monofilament.
Carry on, boys. I'll be right back.
It worked. It did,
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Desiccant, boys, for better action on your popper. Don't ignore it. Go get some at Bass Pro Shops. They sell it in the fly shop. So I got a question on material, man. What is, in your opinion, some of the material that is like people misunderstand? Your bucktail, explanation, how you held it up. And that's exactly what I look at when I see bucktail. I'm like, that's not going to do much.
Right.
But I know it's so effective because like Clouser minnows, I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, right. It's just incredible.
Yeah. It's so
what are some of the unsung heroes of fly material world that if people knew, you'd see it more prevalent in the bass game, let's say, borrowing from salt or fresh?
I think feathers. I think feathers are widely misunderstood as far as being not a durable option.
True.
The truth is, if you, well, look, I'm not going to do it, but here's a Ned, right? Here's a Ned dread.
I love that thing.
It's got feather on top and skirt silicone here.
Yep.
If I pull hard on this feather, nothing's going to happen. If I pull hard on this right here,
you're breaking it. It's crazy to think about, right? That feather's more durable than, I wish they made giant peacock curl. I know they don't, because is there anything more beautiful than peacock curl? It's unbelievable.
No, there really isn't.
Yeah. So I got a question. Yeah. Like the plain old feather treble, I have some back here. It's always white schlappen or some other form of and variation of white. Why aren't there, like if I'm throwing a popper that's a bluegill belly and has the bars on the side, I know the fish is looking up, but wouldn't I want to mirror the bluegill tail? And there's so many feathers out there. Would that produce more strikes? Can I get the same action that I would get on schlappen if I was using, and you're way more familiar than fern feather than I am, but think about the feathers and the birds that would create the illusion of a bluegill tail. Because I'm either, what am I imitating when I'm throwing a popper? A shad or for sure a bluegill? What do you think? Yeah. Would that operate like the schlappen that we see on popper tails?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I would love to see things like that. Dressed feathers on big bluegill baits. Oh my gosh, that would be awesome.
Right. So this is what I use on mine.
It's beautiful.
It's Indian cock neck.
Okay.
And an Indian hen neck, essentially. Wow. Cheapest, well, not anymore, but historically the cheapest necks you could get. These were like $4.
That's so
at the
crazy.
Retail store.
Oh my gosh.
Not anymore, but I mean,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, these colors right here too, done.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know I've got some.
And these,
man, that's how pretty that is.
Mayfly.
Oh, yeah, like during the mayfly hatch.
So
what are those again? Show that again, Brian, because I have a couple ideas for going up to Mille Lacs and the mayfly hatch. So
here's something to think about.
Oh, look at that.
You see?
I see it.
maybe we're giving fish way too much credit, right?
We are. Okay, fair.
All right.
That's
So
fair. That's
what
fair.
what if your spook, you've tied these on your trebles, right?
Yeah.
And you let your spook sit there and a fish comes up and eats it. And you're up there in Mille Lacs where there's a hexagenia hatch going on and you got mayflies this big, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? They're this color.
Well,
right? And you've got some of these tied onto a treble hook. And the fish is looking up and seeing a whole bunch of very similar things to this.
And then you show them.
And these just so happen to be next to something that looks like a bait fish. I mean, is that like someone throwing pepperoni on a pizza?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, here's the thing is like, I try to pay as much attention to nature and what's going on without this filter of belief and disbelief. It's more like, let's just absorb what's going on, process it, and see what makes sense. If I can repeat it, wonderful. If I can't, maybe it's not worth paying attention to. Certain things happen at certain times. You've got birds showing up certain times a year, water turning over at certain times a year, insects hatching, bait fish hatching. All of these things are happening due to what? Not because we tell them it's time to do it.
It's nature, man. It's temperature.
So the more I can, as an angler and a designer, try to think closer to think in the field, so to speak, without sounding dumb, but think closer to nature, closer to what might they be reacting to. Maybe they don't have any. Maybe their thought process doesn't even include crayfish when I'm throwing the jig.
Interesting.
Right? And maybe that's why I'm getting bit on the way down on the drop more often, and the rate of fall is more important of the jig than it was last week, last month, next week, next month. So. Again, like if you've got the right tools for the situation and you understand the situation, or at least you think you understand the situation, you've got something you've got a card in your hand that you can play. I'm trying to do this with the mind that I'm results oriented, and the best hand of cards I can go at this with, the better off I'll be.
Yeah.
So one of the things I learned so much by working with as many really amazing anglers as I did was the way they saw things. The things that they saw were important, and those were not in line with the majority of other people.
Fascinating, man.
But because these people were guides for 30 years, because they were 70 years old at this point, they lived through 60 years of different situations. They brought more to the plate than you could possibly read in a book or experience in 30 years, right? On your own. So absorb and see what you can do with what you've taken in.
That's interesting. Very true.
I really like
thought-provoking.
Yeah, Brian, when you were saying earlier, one of the first things in our show tonight that you said that was really, it seems simple thinking about it now, but what an important consideration. And this is probably something that a lot of bass jig designers should consider. And you made a differentiation between what is happening when a jig is falling through cattails as opposed to what's included in a jig of that type, as opposed to what you want a jig to do when it sits on the bottom. And there is a difference.
Sure.
And it cued my ears enough where I'm like, you could design for that function right there. And I mean, that's going to mean different things to different designers, but I know what it meant to me. It talks about where, bottom materials are kind of like, if it's on the bottom and you want action, I'm thinking about how wispy the material is. And you start talking marabous and other things. I kind of want to start playing around a little bit more. And I have a good stash of it is is the guinea hackles or the guinea feathers and those small little colored. There's so many cool little feathers out there, and I think people just need to experiment and see what they get out of it when they use it. Almost similar to what you would use schlappen for.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Brian, talk about this. This is what I want to hear, because the Ned Dread is what would you say is the most popular jig that you have out manufactured? Let's just call it Tackle Warehouse. Is it the Ned Dread?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so talk about that.
Oh, wow.
I forgot who it was. I read an article where I don't know who it was. It might have been an In Fisherman article.
Yeah, it could have been Ned
and
Katie.
somebody. Yes, Ned.
Yeah,
Ned
the finesse forum, right? Midwest finesse, probably.
It was a great article, because the questions that were asked of you was really getting into the specifics of kind of like what you included in the design of the Ned Dread and why. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's let me pull these down real quick, because I just found these the other day and I thought these were goners. These are from like 20 years ago, probably, or damn near it.
Shit.
This is when Flyman Fish Company came out with a product called the Sculpin helmet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That just so happened to fit on a 90-degree jig head.
I bought those Sculpin helmets. I didn't know what to do with them, but I liked them.
Yeah. So I started
on a
making
90-degree
flies that would, essentially a Ned.
Holy crap. Look at that.
With this is rabbit and leather. I made
leather Eric
crayfish.
Oh my God. Look
Right.
at that.
With leather and a little bit of silicone. So these two stand up.
That's a
so this was
thing.
like the very beginning of the Neds. And this hook is cut off. Let's see.
You know what you need, Brian? You need like this magnifier that slides right in front of your lens, like Eric. You
like
see,
this.
look at Eric. Look at Eric's screen.
Oh, let's see.
Eric's got this magnifier. I'm teasing you, buddy, but conceptually, I just wanted. Oh
Yes.
yeah, here we go.
Yes.
Oh yeah, look at Eric. Eric,
Yes.
you got competition, Eric.
Bait cam.
Great cam.
I love it, man. It's
So
hilarious.
So this was God, yeah, a long time ago when I came up with this kind of stand-up situation that is not my invention, but by any means. But I was trying to make it for the fly, so I could catch fish like that on the fly rod from a float tube. That was the situation, and that was the result of it, and it worked outstandingly well, incredibly well.
Wow.
From there, I started to try to make something that I honestly don't really love rabbit for bass.
Interesting.
Really,
Why?
I really don't. I really don't like the way it reacts with soft plastics.
Interesting.
Not necessarily and there are places and uses where it does work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying across the board, but the typical use of a cross cut or a zonker, I'm not a big fan of what people are doing with it.
Do you think because of
with rabbit, there's better options?
Do you think because of the length of the fur on the hide part of the zonker strip? Do you think that's the way it lays when it interacts with the plastic?
There's so much variation in animal product. It depends on when the rabbit was gassed, quite frankly. Because it's either going to have a thin coat or a full coat. It's going to have under fur or not.
Okay.
So, for instance, piece of bucktail, right? Let's see if I can get something kind of light in the background here.
There you go.
Get that to stand up. Anyway, we'll try. It's fairly short.
Yep.
It's fairly long up here. If I want to pull out a chunk of this to tie on, let me find a long spot. When I get bucktails, I break them all apart into the sections that I'm going to use for specific
different
purposes.
Functions.
Yeah.
So for anyone in the audience, real quick, top of the bucktail, as you tie, is gonna most how would you describe, Brian? You describe this for me because I'm not gonna say it as eloquently as you.
This is getting pretty close to the top. So this is where you're gonna find, well, depending on the top or the bottom of the top. So if it's on the outside or the inside, you're gonna typically find hair that's gonna flare a little bit more. And I'm sorry, a little bit less towards the tip, and towards the base, it's going to flare a little bit more. So the closer it is to the animal's back or butt, the more flare you're going to have in it. I typically use the top 3/4 of a tail for all of my jigs, and the bottom I use stranded. See how, like with this, there's some really long strands.
Yeah, I see that.
So it really just depends on its purpose. But even like this, there's nothing I can do with this like it is. And it's not because the tips aren't even or anything like that. It's because there's so much.
A lot of guard hairs. Whoa.
Under hair.
Yeah.
Under fur.
Guard hairs that are soft. It's more like a fur than it is the hollow hair.
Yeah.
Your hair is all hollow. So you have to know to get rid of,
to clean out your bucktail, right?
Yeah. So I'm only telling you this because you can't do that with rabbit. You can't do that with rabbit. So you can't get this beautiful.
Yeah, look at that.
This beautiful taper that when it's wet, it's going to have, length as well as bulk in the front and a nice taper.
Yeah, really does.
So that right there would go on the back of one of these spinnerbaits right before this stuff goes on.
Nice.
Okay.
And then the marabou goes on next. But so you have to know what part of the material you can use and what you can't.
Right.
So for all intents and purposes, this down here is really good for mayfly guild mayflies like Hexagenia nymphs. Other than that, it's got to go in the trash can.
Bye.
Yeah, because this
Adios, muchacho.
So
very cool.
We're like, Brian, by the way, Eric and I are kind of like Waldorf and Statler, the judges from the Muppets.
My favorite people.
We're just watching the show, my friend. Carry on.
Let me show you something.
I hope it's some polar bear hair.
And if it was, I wouldn't show it to you.
I know. But, I have some legal stuff. Oh my God, this is the anatomical chicken.
Yeah,
we're gonna go
over.
This is it.
Oh boy, so cool.
Here we go. 101. Here we go.
Schlappen in the back, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. So Schlappen right here.
Yes, I love shopping.
Cocktail from here back.
Yep.
All the stiffer stuff, cocktail. There's not an awful lot of Schlappen on a bird.
Wow.
Compared to its neck.
Yeah.
And saddle, which is all of this, everything that would sit like it would on a saddle. On the horse.
Oh, yeah. Is that why they call it that?
Yep.
Never knew that.
Okay.
It's underneath the neck,
which is the cape.
Yep.
Okay.
From their back. So you can kind of see where this split up here.
I never knew that. On the skull. What the hell? This is awesome.
Look what that
is. It?
The little red thingy.
Yeah. That goes there.
That's so cool. What's the most expensive part of that bird?
The
saddle or the cape? It depends on the bird.
So if this was what Whiting Farms would consider their platinum.
Okay.
Cape and platinum saddle from one bird. I you know what? I think the last time I looked, something like that would probably cost about $230.
Holy.
You're blowing my mind. I got a bunch of that stuff in my drawer and I'm not tying with it. I'll put it on eBay.
Yeah, no.
Holy shit.
Now that depends on the bird too. If it's a Cree, that's what you're going to pay that at least. And
oh my God, what did I buy it for 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
Yeah, not 40.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I remember.
You know, like a gold or a
$200?
platinum was like 52 bucks, I think, was a platinum.
I'm going to the store. I'll be right back. My screen's going to go a little crazy, but I got to go get something right now. I want to see what I got. Holy shit.
So like on a turkey, the marabou would come from this area back here, under the tail, and from the butt up underneath the legs.
Okay.
If it was a turkey, you would have, this is where the marabou would come from, which is, you know, going to be even on a chicken. It's pretty much marabou.
Okay.
Mini marabou.
Really?
Chicken.
Really?
This is great for doing woolly bugger tails. Chicken marabou.
Where's the best marabou come from? Premium for I've heard the fashion industry, baby, from the bows at the store. You got to dump out a bunch of it and then get the best. But have you found a reliable source for premium marabou?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, reliable, yes. Consistent.
Okay.
I buy it by the pound, man. So I get
wow,
basically trash bags full, and there's always a string in there that, you know, you look at it and you're like, you had to throw it in there? Really?
Yeah, right.
Like, was this like an insult? Because I can't use it. You should have kept it, you know?
Sure.
You get that for sure. But no, typically it's pretty good.
Okay.
More often than not, it's the dye lot that changes more than anything.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know,
I love when I get schlappen that, like, if I'm looking for a red feather, it's got this variation of like a dark vein in it, you know, or it's olive and then there's a brown through it. It's the tertiary thing that my brain, I didn't know how to describe it. You've educated me a lot tonight. I just knew I liked the look of the color, and it wasn't just it was, you know, anyway. Interesting, man. That was a really great education. I bought it all, but I never knew where it came from on the bird.
Very interesting.
I honestly did. I mean, I'd read my books. I'd watch. There weren't videos back when I started tying. I was like reading through books on how to apply material and, you know, pinching the thread to make sure my stuff stayed. Yeah. But I did buy polar bear hair, and it was legal at the time. Right. I'm sure it's not legal now. But as I understand it, polar bear hair has this magical property of translucency, correct?
Yeah.
Is it special? Is it special? Not that I want a polar bear to die for a fly, but not really.
I mean, it's novelty.
Yeah.
It's
novelty. I was down in the Bahamas. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I tied my own bonefish flies, and we were in Andros Islands in the Bahamas, and I tied a bunch of tied a bunch of very, very popular flies, and we fished with Charlie Nemore out of Bonefish and the Andros Island Bonefish Club, and it was dark. It was during March Madness. A storm had rolled through. There were no lights. You couldn't see any bonefish coming towards you. Fishing on the flats. I had my polar bear hair fly, so, you know, I stripped some line out and chuck it out there, and I'm stripping back, and I feel a little turtle grass. My fly's hung up, and I'm jiggling to try to pop it out. And as I'm jiggling the fly, I get a bite, and I hook a bonefish. So I pop it back out there, and then I started to dead stick my fly and shake it in the turtle grass. And I caught 12 bonefish. Every other boat came in for lunch. We had our tuna fish sandwiches made by Ike with a little red pepper flake. And people were like, that's crazy. And Rudy, my guide, which was the oldest guide in the fleet, he had a push pole, which was a stick. And the oldest boat in the fleet, he testified. I said, guys, you got to dead stick it. You got to cast it out, find some turtle grass, shake it a little bit, and dead stick and count to 5, and you'll get a bite. And they all were dying laughing.
That's
so Drew Conway, Doug Deschero, a bunch of other boats got Kenny Bossong. I'm still with Rudy. We roll around the corner. I catch some more bonefish. Drew and his guide, they stopped the boat. The guy's poling, and Drew cast out. And as soon as he stripped first, he let the fly settle. And both of them at the same time went 1, 2, 3, 4. They started counting down the dead stick, man, and busted out laughing. But it was my polar bear fly story. Was it the polar bear hair, or was it just that I was presenting the fly in a different way? We found
you know, glass minnows down there are I mean, that's a primary
That's a
food.
something.
So,
That is a something thing, man.
so
Yeah.
there's a something to that, you know.
Maybe, but I had
Yeah.
tied up some polar bear because I wanted a translucent material, and I don't know where I read about it. I bought it on eBay. It was numbered by the U.S. whatever it was,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you know what I mean.
If
You
it's
could
certified,
buy.
yeah, yeah.
It was a certified polar bear hair and tied. I still have some. It's beautiful, man. It was
Yeah.
like this ice blue, and what the white was just gorgeous too. Some of it was really creamy. Some was really, pure white, as you can imagine. I got some pink because I wanted a shrimp color. Anyway,
Nice.
those are some of my fly tying travails. I didn't send it in to Umpqua for judging, but I'm sure I bought some flies that you had judged because I was a big consumer of flies. Oh man, I loved everything about fly tying and fly fishing and the whole sport and the connection with nature. And I'm giving you the thank you for your service because I'm sure I bought a fly or two that you put into production at Umpqua, man. That's pretty cool.
I would guarantee it. I would guarantee it. So,
Brian, how would you answer this question here? What the heck is schlopping? So Adam Colley's asking. So let's give him a decent answer, right?
Schlopping is a soft stemmed, webby feather that has a fairly consistent width from base to tip. That's kind of like a
very well.
Let me drop science on you answer. Now let me pull out a piece of schlopping and show you.
Oh, even better, man. I thought, what a great use of words.
I just love the word schlopping, baby.
Schlopping. What are you doing? Just slopping around.
Hey, yeah. Do you even schlopping, bro?
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Now that's
holy smokes.
That's good.
I want your schlopping supplier.
You're damn right you do.
Oh man,
you want that on a feathered treble right there, bro.
This is the stuff that I save for me that I don't send off to the factory.
This is that platinum stuff you're talking about.
Old school, hand strung, real deal. Every feather here is usable.
Oh, see, on my slapping
anymore, man.
On my slapping, buddy, I like maybe use 1 out of 10 feathers. They suck.
Oh no, you can't get it like this anymore. You can't.
That's beautiful.
I have a good friend in the a good fairly famous friend that lives nearby who's a fly tyer that when he was moving his shop discovered that he had this box of white schlopping hand strung stuff from like 25 30 years ago that he totally forgot he had.
Oh my god.
And it was all sealed up and he's like, hey, do you have any use for this? And I was like, I would all of that.
Do you have any use for it? White, especially white.
I want it brown.
What do you like? And I got to ask the question because I tie a lot of feathered trebles and I like to tie them in different colors. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite feather for tying a feathered treble for the back of a popper or a dress treble for wherever I might use it? On the back of, I love a feathered treble. If anybody's curious, this is my favorite bait to throw a feathered treble on. The tail, the lucky, you can't tie it too long, FYI, because it'll impart undesirable action. Got to tie it short, but that's a bevy shad, by the way. Lucky.
This is some juice coming right now too.
Golden shiner color.
I like
my favorite of all time.
I like India hen or India cock necks and or India hen necks.
Again, here we go.
Yeah. So if I want it to be just depending on what I want it to be, a long and narrow.
Yeah.
With a point.
Yep.
And that's the cock neck or a rooster. We'll do that so YouTube doesn't get you. Yeah, so this is great. This is also great behind. Let's see.
So I tie that in first on my feathered treble, right?
Yeah.
The Indian hen neck, right?
And then here the hen is rounded. It's webbier and softer. See how these barbs kind of stick together?
Let me make you big here, bro.
Yeah, make them big, bro.
See how these barbs kind of stick together as I bend it?
Yep.
And with the rooster, though, it's going to be hard to see, I bet. Let's see. Maybe not.
No, we can see it.
They all want to separate and splay out.
Yeah.
So dry fly hackle. Okay. So you've seen a dry fly in that hackle.
Yeah, sure.
Rooster. Okay. So personally, I like to take some of this.
Yep.
Strip that off so that the way I'm doing it right here, the feathers are concave.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the concave part
Faces
is
out.
facing me.
Yep.
Okay. So I like to marry these.
Oh wow, dude.
Oh yes.
What's on the outside of the feathered treble? The rounded one, just like that. This would be the interior that I'm looking at, or the opposite?
So this would go
Concave is towards them.
Oh, I like that light. Whatever you had on, that was good. Yeah. Okay, so the skinny one's on the inside.
Yep. And then
That's
the next
really
one would
cool.
go between this gap.
Yeah. I dig that, man.
So this is a giant hook. This isn't the hook I would use, obviously.
No,
but
right.
For reference, that's
fine.
That's how that would go in. Yeah.
That's a good looking tail.
And that's Indian hen, you're saying, Bri, right?
Indian hen and Indian rooster. Yeah.
Indian hen and Indian rooster. And you could get those things. Maybe your price and how you buy it is different, but you can buy those for what, a 12 to
they're cheap.
12 to 10 to $15 maybe.
Yeah, they're super cheap because they're literally like that's all imported birds from largely from India.
Okay.
No, they're pretty inexpensive. They've gotten more expensive because of import costs and whatnot. But
sure.
No, they're still far cheaper than buying anything from a major brand like Met's Feathers or Whiting Farms. And they would both sell that.
So if I wanted a dress treble that, let's say I wasn't working my popper really quick, I was more like a with a Rebel popper, and I'm going bloop bloop, and I'm letting it sit, and I want that feather in the water just moving. What is the feather that has the most action, in your opinion, while sitting still? Should I be tying with marabou? Nobody knows that I've seen. What do I want?
No, I've had more trouble with marabou than not in a treble because it's too light, it's too soft, it has a tendency to want to come back over itself.
Interesting.
So it doesn't, especially with something that's going to be moving an awful lot.
Sure.
That marabou tends to foul.
Fair.
And angle.
Fair. Schlappen for the most movement.
That's why I used that combination I just showed you.
Interesting. So
because
you're getting the movement.
The hen is soft and will move.
Okay.
And that rooster being married on top of it is going to give it the structure.
Yeah.
Keep it in place.
Yep.
And in this combination, it's kind of nice because it adds a little bit of barring, a little bit of dirty. But other than that, I'm using it because on their own, neither one of them is quite sufficient. The combination accomplishes what I'm looking for.
Very interesting.
So the other thing is the variation in size. In my mind, looking at it in a tank underwater, a fish tank. Yeah, it looks more buggy. So if I don't want to eliminate the thought of an insect being part of this situation, then I like the buggy, but I like structured bugginess.
Interesting. I never thought about it. I think that's a whole thing that probably people throw in a top order. It's got to be a shad or a bluegill. Nobody's thinking about the bug. The bug.
I mean, if it's sitting still, and I can't even tell you how many times I've had a crankbait or just something that I didn't even need to be sitting on the surface get blown up on because I was doing something else. Right?
Dead sticking, sure, for sure.
So why not?
Why not? Think about a dragonfly body and a dragonfly wing. Sure. That popper could be that. It doesn't have to always be a bait fish. Just opened a whole nother thought process in my mind because it would be a color and not necessarily a profile they haven't seen, but certainly if color matters.
There's so much. I
think it does. How do you explain a fire orange chartreuse merthiolate worm? What the color doesn't matter. They bite the shit out of it.
Hot pink is my favorite.
A hot pink trick worm. They bite the shit out. Why isn't anybody throwing a hot pink popper?
Huh.
Explain it to me.
Who's not throwing a hot pink popper?
There you go. That's what I'm saying. Right?
Come on.
Cuda.
Get on Tackle Warehouse and make that purchase.
I know.
A hot pink. I mean,
holy crap!
Why wouldn't anybody throw a hot pink rat? I don't know.
Why not?
Brian, look at what excited me. So Anthony says in chat. So he says, he goes, "Can you talk about the flow of your swim jigs and what makes them stand out?"
Sure. Essentially the swim. Let me get the white one because it's probably easier to see.
I totally want to see this jig.
I know. I saw that comment. I'm like, I'm
a swim jigging fool, man. I'm not ready for it.
So this is basically from their back is essentially the swim jig.
So
it has a weed guard. I don't have one here, otherwise I'd show it to you.
You sold them all.
Yeah.
You sold them all.
So basically the idea of it is and I only ever made them in one size and 3/8.
Okay.
And the idea was
best size you can make.
A dead stick, slow retrieve, constant reel, swim bait, whether it goes through structure or not.
Sure.
There's an awful lot of movement in it, a lot of swimming. So
that's why they do the Alabama shake.
The Alabama shake.
They have to. That's how they do it down south. We don't do it that way up here on the Potomac. But if you see a swim jigger down south, they're doing the Alabama shake. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah.
And there's something in the swim jig. There's a rattle, by the way, FYI.
So that was essentially the whole idea behind it, because you can definitely put it through anywhere that a swim jig needs to go through the grass and rip it out. And it's still a swim jig, but the idea was more smallmouth in mind. River, something that you can swing in and out of currents and along seams, bubble lines, move it in and out of those type of situations. It was more of an animation through the retrieval process rather than a retrieval process with animation because of a tail or something to that effect that you've added. It really allowed you, if you guys have ever done any swinging of streamers with a fly rod,
hell yeah,
you get it like that. Okay. So you can swing this in a river, you can swing this jig because it really does have a pretty good profile. I mean, that the marabou is not, they don't just become technical toothpicks, there's enough bulk to them that they maintain. And you can move them in and out of current pretty well. Above and beyond that, still water, 3/8 allows you an awful lot of options.
It sure does.
Vertical, you can straight retrieve.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a pretty basic minnow design that I could repeat consistently.
Okay.
Make dozens and dozens at a time and have them all be the same and all work the same.
Very cool. Consistency.
So there you go. This time it was like flow, design.
Yes.
Just
depends. So I got to tell you, Brian, this was awesome. I appreciate, and I think we're going to have to get you on
again
another time again. Sure. and talk about some more things. And then
no, we don't talk. All he does is tie, and we get to hear his music.
We need to be Waldorf and Statler on the side, man. And then just listen to Brian. You guys, anyone in chat, any closing? Adam Colley said, "I'm going to go spend some money on Brian's jigs." And then he did a sad face. He's like, "But they're sold out on Tackle Warehouse." So
no, man, you guys are freaking savages. I'm telling you.
I have a feeling that some other people already knew about these. Brian, listen, any parting things that you'd like to say to the audience here before we get out of here? I mean, it's been an honor, man. This has been awesome.
I loved it.
I'm sure you can find my email if you have any questions. If you want to just chat, I'm a normal guy, man. I pick up the phone, I answer emails. You know what I mean? Cool. Yeah, don't be bashful. If you have questions, you just want to chat, tell stories. I'm open to that. Anything I can do to help, let me know. I'm super grateful to be on this. This this was a little bit. I sit in my basement and I make jigs and I don't see anybody and I don't talk to anybody. And I was like, holy crap, people know who I am.
You fit
hell yeah,
the
they
bill.
do.
You fit the bill for Jig Squad, Bri. It was
You
so
damn
awesome.
right, man.
I mean, this is, to be honest with you, like this is exactly what this is all supposed to be about.
Right.
What Sean Lai saying, where else can we buy them? So, Bri, for the most part, it's Tackle Warehouse, right?
For the most part, it's Tackle Warehouse. But you can always contact me directly. Always. I'm working on getting my website, back up. I'm just at the point where I can start taking orders and being able to fill them without having to tell people. I mean, I was literally telling people it's going to be 7 months.
Wow.
Because I had so many orders that I had to stop, man. I was taking more orders than I was tying. So I had to stop.
Yeah.
And I just, so now I'm at a point where I'm definitely, floodgates are open and I'm taking orders, but website's not quite done yet. It should be. I'll do an Instagram post when it is, but if you want to get with me on Instagram or email, call me, whatever.
That's
so cool, man.
That's an awesome offering. So, Brian, I would definitely say that somewhere along the way, I definitely think we need to get you on again, and then even some more specific things, because I will tell you some of the stuff about the feathers was just such a great starting point. And here's the thing: the one thing I'll say is I kind of like the fact that there's a willingness in chat for people to ask about like what a material is and things like that. Guys, listen. One of us is no more skilled than the next when it comes to our passion, right? Our passion is all unique, and that's what Jig Squad is supposed to all be about. So if we have questions about materials or whatever it is, we want to make sure that we allow that, and we're supporting each other in chat. So new and old, experienced or inexperienced, it doesn't matter. I think the willingness to create is what it's all about. To always put color first, or flow,
it's
or
going to
design.
end up being green pumpkin. So why does it need to be first?
That's right. Do we need to talk about any other colors when there's only one?
Right. I mean, come on.
So, Brian, listen, we are going to get out of here, everyone. Sean lied. This man is an encyclopedia, but he comes with so many great stories and experiences, and I don't think this is going to be the last of Brian Schmidt being part of the Jig Squad revolution. So we're going to get out of here, folks. I thank you all in chat tonight. Anyone listening on the replay, we will be at it again next week. We have Debo himself, Mr. Debo Fishing, will be joining us next week on Jig Squad. Debo is new to making jigs. So, and that's why we're bringing him on, because Debo's partnered up with my company that I'm with, doing molds, and he's going to be coming in talking about what the experiences is like being a new jig designer. And I think that's going to be awesome for people as part of the Jig Squad experience to hear what that is like. So I'm excited about that. We have a little bit of everything for everyone here at Jig Squad. And with that, we're gonna dip. Eric, Brian, anything else, boys?
Man, no, man. Great show. Thank you, Brian. A pleasure. You're a master tire, man.
And, I appreciate it, guys.
Yes, very much.
It was a whole lot of fun. And I just realized that this whole comment section was over here on the right. And I wasn't ignoring anybody. I was asking questions. I apologize. So if I didn't see it and I didn't see your question, shoot me an email or hit me up.
I try to highlight what we can or bring it up. But if we missed anything, guys, you guys can always comment on the video and we can always get to you on Instagram. Brian's is listed here, or at Jig Squad. And of course, you could chase Eric or myself down as well. So
that's right on, man. And hit that like and share for Kuda, man. He's
hit that like and share. Somebody's telling me this is important stuff, like this YouTube thing. Hey, we're going to do our thing no matter what, but that like and share apparently is supposed to mean something too. So if you like the show, slap the button, guys. We'll see you next week.
And share.
And share.
Sharing is caring, man.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is like sharing your best strung schlappen with your buddy.
Share your slapping.
If you care, you would give me a foot of slapping. If you care, you would give Kuda a like and share.
Folks, we got all kinds of phrases, and we'd probably keep going. This is Jig Squad, folks. Welcome to the revolution. We're out of here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Bryce, stick around, brother.
Okay.
All right.